everybody. Welcome back to WorldComEdy's Izistoryhaus series. My name is Brian Stuart. In this project, we're taking a look at 25 different famous English stories. And of course, most of these are children's stories. And this project is a very good project because the students or the children who are involved in this project each read part of the story, and then of course all these parts are put together to make the whole story. And the children will read the story from the book or from memory, which is a very good way to remember important vocabulary and how that vocabulary is used in various expressions. And of course, the stories are very important. These stories are known and loved by millions of children and adults all over the world, and not just in English, of course, in many other languages as well. But of course, we're focusing on English education in this series, and so we're taking a look at the English versions of these stories. In this story, we have The Selfish Giant. It was written originally by Oscar Wilde, who's a famous Irish author. And in this story, we learn the importance of compassion, but we also learn the very important lesson that when you make other people happy, you make yourself happy too. The true way to happiness is to show compassion. And by doing that, by showing compassion and giving other people, maybe making a sacrifice so that other people can enjoy your actions, will make you a truly happy and fulfilled person as well. So there's a very good lesson to learn, and it's a great story to listen to or to read. So let's do that. Let's listen to the children telling the story and learn some important vocabulary along the way. Let's go.
Page 2. Every day after school, all the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a very large and lovely garden. It had a carpet of soft green grass. There were many beautiful flowers all over the grass. They looked like bright colorful stars. There were also 12 peach trees that broke out into pretty blossoms of pink and pearl in the springtime. And in the autumn they bore rich fruit. The birds would sit on the trees and sing as sweet as angels. The children used to stop their games to listen to them. They would say, "How happy we are here!" Then one day the giant came back. He was away on a long trip. He went to visit his friend, another giant, and stayed with him for 7 years. During the 7 years, the giant said all that he had to say, saw all that he wanted to see, and did all that he needed to do. And so he decided to return to his own castle. However, when the giant arrived, he saw the children playing, laughing, and running around in his garden. He was shocked and upset. "What are you doing here?" he yelled it in a very deep voice. The children were scared at the sight of the angry giant and they ran away. "My garden is my garden," said the giant selfishly. "Anyone can understand that. And I don't have to share it with anyone else. Nobody can enjoy it but me." So he built a high wall all around his garden. He even put up a sign that read, "Beware, trespassers will be punished." He was a very selfish giant. Now the poor children had nowhere to play. For a while, they tried to look for another garden to play in. They couldn't find one as nice as the giant's. They looked high and low for a place where they could play games, laugh, and run around. They even tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones. They didn't like it. Sometimes they would wander around the high wall of the giant's garden after school. They stared at the wall and talked about the beautiful garden inside. How happy we were there, they said to each other.
Page 6. Then the spring came, and all over the country trees and flowers were blossoming. Little birds were flying from branch to branch, singing pretty songs. But in the garden of the selfish giant, it was still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it because there were no children, and the trees and flowers forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower poked its head out from the grass, but when it saw the sight, it felt sorry for the children. So it went back into the ground and went to sleep again. The only ones who were pleased were the snow and the frost. Spring has forgotten this garden, they cried. So we don't have to ever live here. We can stay here forever. They started to laugh with joy. The snow covered up the green grass with her great white cloak. The frost painted all the trees silver. Soon, the once colorful garden with soft green grass became a cold snowy field. There were no more flowers, no more fruit, and no more singing birds. They decided to invite another friend. They asked the North Wind to stay with them, and he accepted their invitation. The North Wind was wrapped in thick furs. He flew around and rolled all day about the garden. He blew and blew until he was happy. Finally, he said, "This is a wonderful spot. We must ask the hail to drop by for a visit." Of course, the hail came. He was dressed in all gray, and his breath was as cold as ice. Everyone could hear him coming from far away. Every day, for hours and hours, he rattled on the roof of the castle. He broke part of the roof and even some windows. Then, for extra fun, he ran around and around the garden as fast as he could go.
Page 10. The selfish giant wondered why the long cold season wasn't changing. "I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming," he said as he sat at the window and looked out at his cold white garden. He sighed a heavy sigh and said, "I hope there will be a change in the weather soon." But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave delicious fruit to every garden, but to the giant's garden she gave none. "He is too selfish," she said. "He needs to be taught a lesson." So it was always winter in the giant's garden. The north wind, the hail, the frost, and the snow danced around the trees. One morning, the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears. He thought it must be the king's musicians passing by. However, it was only a little bird singing outside his window. The giant missed hearing a bird sing in his garden. The little bird singing seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. Then suddenly, the hare stopped dancing over his head and the north wind stopped roaring. The giant could smell a delicious perfume coming through the window. I believe the spring has come at last, said the giant. He jumped out of bed and looked up. What did he see? He saw the most wonderful sight. The children found a small opening in the wall. Through the little hole, the children crept in. They climbed up the trees and sat in the branches. In every tree, there was a little child. The trees were so glad to have children back again. They shook off the white snow and covered themselves with blossoms. The trees waved their branches gently above the children's heads. The birds came back in flocks. They were flying about and singing with delight. The flowers popped out of the ground. They were looking up through the green grass and laughing. The garden came alive again. It was a lovely sense, but in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden. A little boy was standing in the corner all alone. He was so small and weak. He couldn't reach up to the branches of the tree. So he was wandering all around it, crying sadly. The poor tree was there covered with frost and snow. The north wind was blowing and roaring above it. He didn't want the spring to come to the garden. So he blew harder and harder. The tree wanted to help the tiny boy. Climb up, little boy, said the tree. It bent its branches down as low as it could. But the boy was too small.
The giant's heart melted as he looked out.
How selfish I have been, he said. Now I know why the spring would not come here. I'll put the poor little boy on the top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall. From now on, I'll share my garden with all the children. My garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever. He was really very sorry for his selfishness. So he quietly went downstairs and opened the door very softly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they became frightened and they all ran away. The garden became winter again. Only the little boy didn't run. His eyes were full of tears, so he didn't see the giant coming. The giant stood beside the little boy and took him gently in his hand. Very carefully, he put him up into the tree. As soon as the boy touched the tree, it broke out at once into blossoms. The birds came and sang on it. Then the boy did something very unexpected. The little boy stretched out his two arms and put them around the giant's neck and kissed him. The giant was surprised by the act at first, but then he felt something new and strange. He felt love. The other children saw that the giant was not wicked any longer, so they ran back into the garden and with them come the spring. It is your garden now, little children, said the giant with a smile. He then took a big axe and knocked down the wall. Some people were walking past the giant's castle. They found the giant playing with the children. They stopped and stared because it was the most beautiful garden they ever saw.
Long the children played in the garden. Finally, when evening came, they went to the giant to say goodbye. However, the giant couldn't find the tiny boy who kissed him. But where is your little friend? The giant asked. The boy I put into the tree. The giant loved him the best because he was the one who kissed him. We don't know, answered the children. You must tell him to come here again tomorrow, said the giant. But the children said they didn't know where he lived. In fact, they never saw him before. The giant felt very sad. Every afternoon when school was over, the children came and played with the giant. But the special little boy was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he missed his precious little friend. He would often speak of him, how I would to see him again, he used to say. Years went by and the giant grew very old and weak. He could not play with the children anymore. So he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games. Every day he would sit in his armchair and watch the children laughing and running. He would also admire his garden. He loved looking at the tall trees and the green grass. He loved smelling the beautiful flowers, and he loved listening to the birds singing. I have many beautiful flowers, he thought, but the children's are the most beautiful flowers of all.
Page 21. One winter morning, he looked out of his window. He was getting dressed for the day. He didn't hate the winter now because he knew that it was only the spring asleep.
and that the flowers were resting, but something caught his eye. Suddenly, he rubbed his eyes in wonder. He looked and looked. He almost couldn't believe what he saw. It certainly was a wonderful sight. In the forest corner of the garden was a tree covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were all golden and silver fruit hung down from them. But the most wonderful sight was right underneath the tree. The little boy he loved the most was staying under the tree. The giant ran downstairs with great joy. His heart was full of warmth and love. He ran out as quickly as he could into the garden. He walked across the grass and came near to the child. He was so happy to see the little boy. But when he got closer, his face grew red with anger. He noticed that the little boy was hurt. On each palm of the child's hand was a hole. They were the prints of 2 nails on each of the child's little feet was also a hole. They were also the prints of 2 nails. The giant was very angry. He couldn't believe that anyone would want to hurt such a sweet little boy. Who dared to hurt you? Roared the giant. Tell me and I will take my big sword and fight him. No, there is no one to fight, answered the child. These are the ones of love. The giant felt a strange sense of respect. Without thinking, he kneeled down before the little child. Who are you? Whispered the giant. The child smiled sweetly on the giant and said to him, You let me play once in your garden. Today you will come with me to my garden, which is paradise. When the children ran into the garden that afternoon, they found the giant laying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossom. The end.